Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And I rise to speak to the substance of this bill before us, the nature-positive bill that we are putting forward. And what a load of rubbish I've had to listen to about how it's not going to do anything. This is a significant step, a step forward in protecting our environment. Now, I know everyone in this place thinks that the area they represent is special and unique. But the area that lies within the surrounds and the electorate of Macquarie is World Heritage listed, and the Blue Mountains is the only city within a World Heritage area anywhere in the world. Our World Heritage Area has 8 protected areas: the Blue Mountains, Wollamai, Yengo, Natai, Canangra Boyd, Gardens of Stone and Thirlmere Lakes National Parks, and the Jenolan Karst Conservation Reserve. It's 1.03 million hectares of eucalyptus-dominated landscape, one of the largest and most intact tracts of protected bushland in the country. The diverse plant communities and habitats support more than 400 animals, of which 40 are threatened. There are 52 mammals, 63 reptiles and over 30 frogs, and about 1/3 of Australia's entire bird species. There are vertebrates like the platypus and echidna. And although invertebrates are still poorly known, there's around 120 butterfly and 4,000 moth species. So beyond comprehension to think about the richness of our flora and fauna here, and it includes, of course, the Wollamai pine, something from the time of the dinosaurs. And ongoing research continues to reveal the rich scientific value of the area as more species are discovered. This exceptional biodiversity is complemented with equally special Indigenous heritage, as well as post-European settlement cultural values, geodiversity, water production, wilderness, recreation and natural beauty. I chose to live in this World Heritage Area more than 30 years ago, and now 3 generations of my extended family live in the Blue Mountains. So I care, and my community cares, and I would not be backing this bill if I didn't believe that it is a significant step forward, a step in reversing the extinction and destruction of native species that we've seen, and protecting our environment better than it ever has been before. Finally, we will have an independent National Environment Protection Agency, which will have much stronger power than anything the current department has. Right up front, let me say, and I know as I'm saying this, there are good people thinking, yeah, that's great, but we want more. Well, of course we do. We all want more, and it is Labor's commitment to do more, to build on the traditions of past Labor governments and shift the protections. A full rewriting of the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act will be what follows this bill. As I was saying earlier in the debate, this is a really key step, but it isn't the last step. There is more to come. As recommended by Graham Samuel, the rewriting of the EPBC Act to bring it into the 21st century is what comes next. Now, that in itself is a big piece of work, and I'm not just talking about the actual drafting of the document, but the reaching a place where there are new rules that will actually work. We have been stuck with the John Howard environment laws, which aren't working for the environment. They're not working for business and haven't done for many, many years, and ours need to be right. And they also need to be able to be supported by a majority of this parliament. And yes, to the naysayers, we are being ambitious on our environmental objectives. Our policy goal is nature positive, which describes circumstances where nature, individual species and whole ecosystems are being repaired and regenerated rather than being in decline. And I was really pleased to have the Minister for the Environment in my electorate recently to look at an example where a threatened species, the Palmer wallaby, has been brought back from the brink thanks to the work of one family, the Peter Pickett, better known as Uncle Pete's Toys, but for decades and decades he has committed himself to tackling the problems that the Palmer wallaby faces. And that is a fantastic example of what nature positive is. Our ambition sits in a reality of what is here in this chamber and in the Senate, where we navigate a course between poles which are a significant distance apart. On the one side, the Liberals and Nationals who don't want anything to change, who just want to oppose and block improvements to environment laws, and the other side, the Greens, who don't believe, well, I don't believe, want a solution because they're in it for the fight. I doubt I will ever forgive their actions in 2009 that led to the end of the CPRS and the end of climate action until our re-election in 2022. That was 13 years of delay and damage. And we cannot let that be repeated on this very important legislation and that follows. I am choosing to vote for progress, for a really big change. And the only questions on this legislation should be, do we want an independent EPA or not? And do we want better data to inform environmental decisions or not? And do we want tougher penalties for those breaking environment laws or not? They are the choices that we are making today. These changes don't come in a vacuum. Last year, Labor passed legislation to establish the world's first nature repair market, creating a market to encourage private spending on projects that protect and restore biodiversity, not unlike the work that Peter Piggott up in Mount Wilson has done with the Palmer wallabies. We also increased the reach of our environmental laws, so the Minister for Environment must assess all unconventional gas projects, including shale gas, which trigger our environmental laws. As the second stage of our environmental law changes, this legislation is the tough cop on the beat that we promised. Environment Protection Australia, our EPA, is an important part of delivering the government's nature positive plan. Passing this legislation will mean that we can get on with the nuts and bolts of setting up the new EPA before they're being asked to administer the future new environmental laws. It allows a smoother transition of responsibilities from the department to the agency. We're establishing Australia's first national independent environment protection agency with strong new powers and penalties to better protect nature. The EPA would administer Australia's national environmental laws so that we're making better, faster decisions that better protect the environment. It is possible to do all those things. It would be charged with delivering accountable, efficient, outcome-focused and transparent environmental regulatory decision-making. The EPA would be a truly national environmental regulator that Australians can be proud of, responsible for a wide range of activities under Australia's environment laws, including things like recycling and waste exports, hazardous waste, wildlife trade, sea dumping, ozone protection, underwater cultural heritage and air quality. We're investing in people, our planning, our systems to speed up development decisions, to deliver quicker yeses and, where necessary, quicker nos. The government's offsets audit found that 1 in 7 projects using environmental offsets under our environmental laws currently had either clearly or potentially breached their approval conditions. A separate audit found that 1 in 4 had potentially failed to secure enough environmental credits to offset the damage they were doing. And we see this right through Western Sydney with major projects, a total failure. This is unacceptable, and there's been so little enforcement on these rules. And that's what the EPA will do, be the enforcer. The EPA, as the tough cop on the beat, will enforce the laws through new monitoring, compliance and enforcement powers. An audit, as I said, the offset is one particular area that I think we could all see needs an instant improvement. I think one of the pieces of data that came out last year was that 1 in 7 developments could be in breach. Now, let's just explain what that is. That is where a business has not properly compensated for the impact of the development was having on the environment. When you look at the way pockets of Cumberland Plain in Western Sydney there's been double dipping in terms of saying, oh, here's a piece that we're going to set aside, and then a few years later that same piece will be set aside for a different project. So the failure to properly administer this has just been catastrophic for the Cumberland Plain in Western Sydney. And then, of course, the Samuel Review into Australia's environment laws found that the regulator is not fulfilling this very necessary function. Professor Samuel also found that serious enforcement actions are rarely used and that penalties need to be more than a cost of doing business. Preventing environmental damage and ensuring our laws are upheld is one of the most important things that we can be doing in this place. For example, if organisations commit to mitigating against or to an offset to make up for an unavoidable impact on nature, the public should be confident that that commitment will be kept. And right now we know that confidence is extremely low. When we think of this bill and put it into context, the stage 3 of our nature-positive legislation will be continue our broader efforts to halt and reverse environmental decline and protect nature. The EPA in itself will deliver proportionate and effective risk-based compliance and enforcement actions using high-quality data and information. It would provide assurance that environmental outcomes are being met. And, Deputy Speaker, what I'd say is that most businesses do the right thing. We know that. Those of us who've been in business, who've worked with businesses big and small, know that people, by and large, want to do the right thing. But we also know that businesses will do what they're required to do. When the penalties for breaking the law are too low and the risk of being caught is negligible, some companies and some individuals regard breaking the law as an acceptable cost of doing business. And that's why we're increasing penalties too. For extremely serious breaches of federal environment law, courts would be able to impose penalties of up to $780 million in some circumstances. The EPA will be able to issue environment protection orders or stop work orders to address or prevent imminent significant environmental risks and harm in urgent circumstances. The EPA would also be able to audit businesses to ensure they're compliant with the environmental approvals that they have been given. The Minister will retain the power to make decisions where they wish to do so, and in practice will make decisions based on the advice of the EPA. The EPA would play a really important role in the full delivery of the Nature Positive Plan and beyond. I think once this organisation is established, as it is in every other state, we'll be saying, why didn't we have this sooner? One of the other parts of this legislation that we're debating today is around the Environment Information Australia aspect. And that is a body to enable better availability and use of environmental data, both in planning and decision-making. These bills set up the head of Environment Information Australia. So it's an independent position with a legislative mandate to provide environmental data and information to the EPA, the Minister and to the public. That independent position is to transparently report on the trends in the environment, and that will support the actions and decisions that we take to halt and reverse the decline and, in turn, to protect and restore nature. A nature-positive Australia is good for the economy, it's good for livelihoods and it's good for well-being. And for a community like mine that lives within a World Heritage area, we know that it's more than the well-being of our community, it's the viability of our community that depends on this.